everybody to the Realist Scraps Wrestling Podcast. I am your host Rolo, and with me for the first time ever, and now also our first interview, our first special guest, Mr. Rafael Flores Jr. He'll introduce himself here in just a bit. So today is a special show because we are doing this interview here. So we're going to talk a little bit about comics, a little bit about wrestling. You know the drill. We kind of previewed this episode a little bit on the last show. So yeah, so look, we're gonna have some fun here today. So Rafael, welcome to the Real Scraps Wrestling Podcast, man. Thank you for being here with me.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm a big fan of the podcast. Wrestling and comics is like my life. So, when I heard that y'all were doing this, I was like, hell yeah, I want to be on it.
Yeah. It just makes sense, right? Like to bring both of them together. Like it's there's fewer things that are different than there is the things that are similar, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, so wrestling. Talk to me a little bit about your passion and love for wrestling. Like, where did
Mhm.
that come from? Where did that start? How long have you been a fan?
Man, I've been a fan like since before I can even remember. Like, I have like vivid memories of like the Attitude Era as a kid. I grew up in '94. Like, I was born in '94, so
Okay.
I grew up in the '90s and the early 2000s, and like I have distinct memories of like seeing like Austin and Rock at WrestleMania. It might have been 18, I think, with the one where he turned heel.
Yeah, 17. Yeah.
Yeah,
Man, you were way too young to
I
be
was.
watching that shit. What
I
the
know
hell?
my whole family was into it. My aunts were able to
Yeah,
pay for the pay per view. I remember getting in trouble for doing the suck it.
the crotch chop. Yeah.
I got my mouth washed out with soap because of that. It was my first time ever like doing that or getting that happen to me.
Yeah.
So that was like so like I don't even remember how I really got introduced to it. It was just always around me.
Hmm.
I grew up in a Mexican American household, and even like I think my uncles, my cousins were all into wrestling. I've heard from my mom that my grandpa used to be like a he used to train luchadors or something like that. He was a boxer.
Really?
He was kind of like a strong man too, like a bodybuilder.
Okay.
Kind of like where he was in those circles.
That's
And
cool. Yeah.
yeah, and so I don't know. Wrestling's always been like my mother and my dad watched it. Like I remember hearing stories about the Von Erichs, as a kid. Um,
Yep.
and, as life went on, I was watching it throughout the what do you call it? The attitude, not attitude, ruthless aggression era.
Such a
The
question.
with John Cena. I wasn't a big fan of John Cena, but I loved Rey Mysterio during that time. He was like my John Cena, man. Like and Eddie Guerrero. I remember when he died and everything. So yeah, I mean, I've always been watching it. Not always like every week to week, but there's been many periods where I was watching it week to week. I used to record like if I missed it, I had a VHS. I could record it,
Hell
set it.
yeah.
Um, and so I've always been a fan of wrestling. It was what always brought me closer to my friends.
Hmm.
Whenever I would go to a new school or something, I'd find the guy that was in wrestling, and then we would just connect like that. And
Nice.
there was a time when I wanted to be a wrestler, but that never happened. But
Why is
it's just
that?
always. Yeah.
Why didn't you pursue the wrestling dream?
I was like in high school, like in junior high. I wanted to be a baseball. I thought I was gonna be a baseball player,
Okay.
and when that fell out, I was like, well, maybe I could do wrestling. I like professional wrestling,
Mm.
and I think I would bug my parents about it, but they would just not like really like they would just kind of really pay no mind to it. You know what I mean? Like, well, yeah, that's not gonna happen. Basically, like I would find like the flyer that was like, hey, look, this says like they have a wrestling school. This is where you go, and it's like, but they were just like, no, that's not gonna
Not gonna happen.
happen.
Where did you grow up?
I'm from DFW, so I grew up in Dallas, Fort Worth area, mostly in Euless, like
Okay.
HEB. Yeah.
Okay. I got a lot of family in the Dallas Fort Worth area. Carrollton represent.
Hmm.
So well, it makes sense. So you heard chingos about the Von Erichs then. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah,
it's not
my
just
mother was a
yeah,
big fan of them. Yeah.
yeah. They're a religion, and yeah. Well, as far as you said, you don't really know where it came from. That it was always around. I mean, during the Attitude Era, it was wrestling was it was an epidemic. Like
Yeah, it was
you
hot.
couldn't, yeah, you couldn't go anywhere or do anything without having wrestling right in your face. You know,
Hmm.
even some of my friend groups during that time, I mean, they weren't really actively watching wrestling, but they still were kind of watching wrestling, and everybody knew, what I was talking about when I bring it up. Yeah, so it was just yeah, that's crazy. That's really cool to that you got to see that at a young age.
I
Um,
remember I remember getting like my mom used to be like a dumpster diver, right?
mm,
And she found like this old collection of like recorded VHS tapes that had like just random wrestling matches on them.
whoa,
This is the Attitude Era. I remember there being the Kurt Angle versus Shane McMahon street fight, and
yeah,
watching that for the first time and being like fucking blown away by it, you know. Sorry,
it
can I
was
cuss on
mind blowing.
it?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was mind blowing. That glass spot that
yeah,
was that was insane. And was it the double doink? Didn't go through it the first time. Had to try it that second time.
yeah. That was one of the most violent matches I think I ever saw at that point in my life. Like,
Yeah.
you see, and then like you see like Hell in the Cell, you see Mankind fall off the cell. Like those moments, like man, they like ingrain in you like a bit, you know.
Yeah, that 1998 Hell in a Cell, that's what got my family into it. Because I was my dad is the one that got me into it. And my older sisters, apparently he would take them to like the sportatorium and stuff, and
Mm.
go see wrestling matches, go see the Von Erichs and everything. Um, and so he was my influence for all that, and just I don't know, man. Just it's weird that it's even though it's hella violent, or it can be, it's still like a family thing. It's
Yeah.
still like so much a family event. Even like lucha libre, which is like kind of
Mhm.
gratuitous with like the you're gonna go through tables and the chairs and just
Yeah.
yelling obscenities at everybody. "Chinga tu madre," all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like
With all
it's crazy.
the sexy girl wrestlers and lucha libre, you see that a lot.
Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
family affair.
Yes, exactly.
Uh, And so you said that it was your grandfather that was a trainer for luchadores?
Yeah, I don't really know this story too much. I know he was a boxer, and I know that he used to work for the gym, like Gold's Gym and
Okay.
stuff like that. And so I feel like he must have been around that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And maybe he was like a trainer or for the gym or something like that. That's just what I've heard.
Okay.
From my mom, she's told me that like, oh, I remember watching him like squash, like sit on people's faces, basically. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh shit.
so
And
yeah,
and that was there in Dallas Fort Worth as well?
yeah, in Dallas area. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
actually, they lived yeah, like they lived in Grand Prairie a lot. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That general area in the
yeah,
Metroplex. Okay. Dude, that's so cool. That's pretty wild. And
yeah.
so where do the comics fit in all that? Like what point did you get into comics, and like what got you into comics?
For me personally, it was like watching the cartoons growing up. I remember watching like X-Men, the animated series, Spider-Man, the animated series. I remember like the Batman, the animated series, like those three right there. Like
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I had to watch something, right? Like my parents had to put something on TV, right? And those were the cartoons that were around when I was a kid. And yeah, and I think those were like the introduction to comic books, like at least the characters. Because I remember like later on when I was like around 6, I got like a shoebox of comic books from one of my older cousins who had a bunch of like 90s comics. There was like Spawn in there, like Spawn number 3, I think. Just random issues of like there was like a Batman, the Mud Pack. It was one of those one with Clayface in it.
Yeah.
There was the Death of Superman was in there. There was like some Captain America. There was like 20 Spider-Man 2099. The first issue was in there, and
Oh,
it was just a
cool.
collection of like these random, comics, and that just got me hooked. At a very young age, I would actually read them. You know what I mean? And then like I wasn't a very avid reader as a kid, but with comic books, it was like I could read them. And I was getting a story, and I knew it was reading, but there was also the art aspect to it. I remember I used to like hang them up on my wall, like posters, like the comics. I would, put a thumbtack in them. And I remember like having one of my like nannies or whatever say like, you just destroyed these comics like by putting holes in them and hanging them on your wall. Like this could have been worth a lot
It's
of money.
art. It's art.
Right. And I was just like, no, man, this is like, I love these. There were so many good comics like that. The Mud Pack one, like I remember like probably like when I would turn like 9 or 10, my dad took me to a comic book store for the first time. And I was able to like look through the comics and find the issues that were missing that I never got to read. So like I think it was like a random number 2, the first one I had. And so I was able to like get the first part of it, the second part, the third part, the fourth part, and like actually read the whole story. And yeah, that was a Batman comic. So like Batman was always like one of my favorite characters. He just had the coolest villains. He had the coolest costume. Like bats in general, and Gotham was like just cool. So yeah, I read a lot of Batman growing up, and it just never stopped. It was just like wrestling. Like once I had it in my hands, I knew that this was like something that was going to be important to me. You know what I mean? And like I don't know. I guess because I'm making them now, right? So like it was all destiny,
Yeah. So okay. So then that's where the idea for Camazotz came was from that obsession, I guess, with Batman.
Yeah, part of it. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I am Mexican American too, so like I like to study Aztec and Mayan mythology as well. But for sure, Batman is like a huge inspiration for that because it's like it's a giant bat. I mean, like if you look at it, like it's fucking
Yeah.
it's dope as well,
And that artwork is amazing, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, man. Azrael, he's our artist, really great artist from Brazil, a great guy, and he's very inspired by like Mike Mignola, Hellboy, and that kind of art style. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I wanted to talk about that because that's definitely something that jumps out is def there's absolutely some Magnolia influence in there. And
hmm
yeah, like I love that, man. It's just yeah, he did a great job on that.
yeah, I read Hellboy in Mexico for like before I even wrote this comic because I was like,
Okay.
I need to like kind of like feel what that his art style is like, so that whenever I write the script, I can be like, I wanted it to look like Mignola, you know.
Yeah, okay. That's a good
Yeah.
move. Okay.
And
And
he
so
yeah,
okay. Go ahead.
he was very into like the colored like part of it because he's also the colorist too. So he was very drawn to the colors of Hellboy, and he used that very much as a reference in the comic as well.
That's good, man. Yeah, you can it's its own thing, but yeah, you can tell where the influence comes from, some of the influence. But tell me more about, I guess, where did it all start? Where did the idea come from, and how long you've been working on it, all that good stuff.
So it started as like a short comic. It was originally a 2-page short comic, and it was like my first comic book ever like I ever made, like on my own, where like I was hiring the people to do it, and I wrote the whole story. Previously, I had done like a short comic where I actually got like paid like $25 to write a script, and then they kind of just took it and did their thing with it. I didn't get to pick out the artist or anything like that. So this is the first time I was able to kind of like I'm gonna find the team, I'm gonna hire the people that I want, and it was like my first original project, and I entered that into a contest, a short comic contest called Negative Space Contest. Check them out; they're really cool. Really cool for writers, especially because they do like script writing contests, but
Okay.
they also do short comic contests too. So they also give really good feedback, and it's all judged by like industry professionals and stuff like that. And they'll
Okay.
like give you feedback notes on your stuff.
Is that
Uh,
like a yearly contest thing, or how's it?
yeah, it's yearly. They do 3 or 4 yearly contests. One for like, underrepresented creators, one's for like men creators, and like one's for like everybody, and then one's for like just short comics.
Okay. Cool.
And yeah, I entered that and got the attention of Grimmcore Studios, the publisher that published the comic. He reached out to me, Daniel Grimm. He just basically said like, I love this short comic. It's really good, and I want to see more of it. I want to see a longer story. And I at that point I hadn't thought of doing a longer story of it. It was that 2 page short, and I was kind of happy with that. And my plan was to do something completely different. I kind of made this short as just like I just wanted to make something really good and really that looked good, and that I could just show people and be like, hey, this is what my brand is. This is what the kind of stuff I want to make. Really just kind of just do it to do it. But I was there was a lot of passion, I guess, in there. And so, he saw that and he wanted me to run with it. And that just got the ball rolling. We talked back and forth about what the story could be. I gave him like an outline, and then, he, gave me notes, and it was a first time publisher. So Grimmcore Studios, it's a very new horror publisher. The guy running it, he used to be editor in chief of Concrete Comics.
Okay.
And and he kind of branched out on his own, and he wanted to do a horror publisher. And I was the first person he reached out to like make a project together. And at that point, I really was looking for like editors and publishers to work with. And he was just there. He was there, and when I needed him. And he was the editor, publisher, marketing manager. He does everything. Like he does the campaign for the Kickstarter. And he was always there to help guide me throughout writing the book, because like I had a lot of trepidation about writing this this comic, because I'd never done something that long before. But he told me like just focus on doing 1 page a day, and just keep it going. Don't like that'll keep your momentum going if you just focus on 1 page a day. And because like doing 1 page is like you can just be like, oh, here's a splash page, and I'm done.
Yeah. So yes, I was asking where the inspiration came from for this particular story.
Okay. The inspiration mostly comes from Mayan mythology, the story of the Mayan hero twins in particular, and how they encountered Camazotz. There's it's a story in the Pupu Vul or Popo Vul, which is like a Mayan codex with a bunch of Mayan stories in it. And it talks a lot about the religion of what they believed. And there's a great book by David Bowles called Feathered Serpent, Dark Heart of Sky. And that's a great resource, I would say, for anyone who wants to learn about Mayan mythology and Aztec mythology, because it groups it all together in like a timeline, and it tells the Mayan hero story is one of those stories in that book. And I took that and I wanted to make like a modern horror story out of it, because I felt like it just was perfect. You know what I mean? It was just perfectly there to like, why hasn't anyone done this? Like, it's a giant bat. It should be like American Werewolf in London. It should be like a werewolf story. And that light bulb, I guess, of like, that I guess that just that pitch, or that that log line of like, it's a man turning into a bat, or it's a giant bat monster. Like, what is the story? And adding the mythology of the Mayan hero twins was just a natural part of that. It was just like I wanted to be faithful to the Mayan mythology in a lot of ways, but I had to change things just for the story to work. But I kept like their twins, and this whole idea of the Mayan hero twins, how before them, they had their own father and uncle who were like basically hero twins, and they died trying to fight the lords of the underworld. And then the new hero twins came, and they killed all the lords of the underworld. And my whole idea was like, what's next? Who are the next twins, and what is their story? And trying to imagine it here in modern times, and like, what would that look like? And I'm very much a gothic person. Personally, I love goth culture. I love bats, and I love goth music, and and so I wanted it to have that feeling, like almost like The Crow. I even told the artist, like the guy, I wanted to look like The Crow with the hair and cool outfit and everything. And and so that was part of it, just adding the mythology, Mayan mythology, but like making it cool, making it like gothic, and and it's a horror story, so it's like you got to add the horror elements, all the the violence and the surprises and the reveals and the twists and turns in the story. That was the fun part, writing it. And yeah, and I took a lot of inspiration from American Werewolf in London. I think that's pretty obvious by if you read it, especially with the ending when the brother comes back. I even like took a line from that movie just as like a hint or a nod, because I love that movie. It's one of those horror movies that you watch as a kid, and it like that transformation scene of the dude turning into the werewolf, like it scars you, right? Like that's such a traumatic scene, and I wanted this story to have that element of like there's this man, like he got bit by the Camazotz. What's gonna happen now? Like I want to see that, and I want to experience that, like anxiety of I'm gonna have to, what am I gonna turn into, and and yeah, like that's what the story. I guess that was the big idea for the story, and it was just about writing it, and like putting it out into the light, because I felt like it was with the mythology of the Mayan hero twins, with the whole using American Werewolf from London as kind of like a start jumping off point. Like you have the two brothers coming to Mexico, and then they run into the Camazotz, and then like one of them dies, and then what happens next, and that's kind of like that was the big element of the story.
And it hooks you from the very beginning, from the jump.
Mm.
You did a really good job in, like you're saying, doing those, and it's little hooks throughout the story.
Yeah,
So you did really good job with that, with the pacing of it all. And yeah, I could definitely tell the inspiration from American Werewolf in London. Oscar did a commission, and we talked about this on the previous episode of Real Scraps. It's coming out before we release this one. And he just did a commission for Guzu Gallery in Austin, and it's based on American Werewolf in London. So
cool.
that was fresh on my mind. So as I was reading it, I was like, ah, this is badass. Like I like
Mhm.
this. I dig this. So
Yeah, I felt like it was just an obvious like thing to do. It just felt natural, like
mhm.
to make it like a werewolf story,
Yeah, yeah, it's something familiar, but it's completely original.
Yeah,
And you talk about that book uh, by David Bowles. I wrote Revive for Chispa Comics, and that's pretty much where I found the most information was stuff that David Bowles had written.
yeah,
There's not a lot of there's info out there, but there's not a lot of very reliable information.
yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, his stuff is pretty solid, man.
Hmm.
So there's a reason why he cranks these things out, man. He's got a lot of knowledge, so
And
I'm
it's
I'm
interesting learning all about Kamazat's, and learning and like learning different things about it, because you're right, like not everything's reliable. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the information that you find is like kind of it's is it actually accurate, or is this like just something that someone made up, because it's a
yeah.
giant bat, and they all they know about is Batman or something. So I remember running into a lot of inconsistencies of like where I'd read the Wikipedia page and it would say one thing, and then I'd read this article about Kamazatz, and it would say another thing.
Contradictory,
And
yeah.
there's a lot of like, so like there's an idea like Kamazatz is he a one deity god, or is he Kamazatz like a bunch of bats named Kamazatz or something like that. And so I even took that. I took the different like ideas about Kamazatz, and I try to mix it together in a way that's like that it's everything's real, everything is true, because
Right.
the way I see it is like these stories are oral stories, right? They were passed down from generation to generation. A lot of times the stories would change throughout the retelling of it, and
Hmm.
so the what we think is the original story isn't really the original story, because there's an original story that was told a long long time ago. And so I
Right.
like to think that today, like all the information that we have about what Kamazatz might have been, like all of it is real, and all of it is just another continuation of telling the story over and over again. And I kind of wanted to, like put everything together, like, and make it make sense, and like make it fucking badass.
And it is. It really is, man. It's dude, it's just really well put together. It and you were talking earlier about the color and everything of it, and it's just that whole tone. And again, right from the jump, like as soon as you see the first page of the book, like you kind of you know what you're getting into, but you don't know what the hell you're getting into.
Yeah.
But it's just one it's a pleasant surprise throughout the whole thing. And I started the Kickstarter recently. That kicked off on October the 1st. Tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter, man. Like what's going on with that? What are the goals? What is up?
So we're doing a Kickstarter for the second issue right now, live on Kickstarter right now. So you can go and check it out, go
Right
support
now,
it.
pause this shit and go support that.
Yeah,
Pause
and
it.
yeah, and we got four amazing covers to choose from. We got one by the
Oh,
main
those are
artist.
fucking fire. Those are
Yeah,
fire.
yeah, I love them. I'm so proud of this issue and the creative team that we've gotten together and the cover artists that we've gotten together. Um, we got we got Caetano Valenzuela, who Black Rabbit Comics,
Black Rabbit.
amazing artist. He did a poster for like some kind of science fiction Latinx convention or something one day a while back, and I remember seeing that, and it was like this like Chicano futuristic like image that he made, and oh my god, I saw that and I was like, I need to work with this guy.
Yeah.
He actually reached out to me and was like, hey, I really dig your comic. Like I read it and it was good, and I was like, really, like, dude, do you want to do a cover? And he was like on board, right away.
Hell yeah.
Um, yeah, and we also got EC Comics homage cover, like from like Tales from the Crypt type of
Mhm.
vibe.
Notice
That one's
that.
done
Yeah.
by Alejandro Samada, really great guy. And we also have a Chrome cover. It's going to be like the foil type cover. We got
Mhm.
that one done by Ariel Medel, who does TMNT versus Street Fighter. Uh,
Yeah.
Really dope artist. And
That's
he did a
insane.
cover for last campaign, so we brought him back to do another Chrome cover.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool, man. A Chrome cover. I'm gonna have to cop that one.
yeah, and we got the first issue for sale. So if you didn't get the first issue last time, you can get it again. And we also have a poster. The poster is free on every tier. So if you get just one comic, you'll get a free poster. And then we also have T-shirts now. We have a Camazotz T-shirt for the first time. I'm excited to get that. So
Heck yeah, man. And so the campaign, it's going through until when?
it's gonna be October 1st, I think, to October 30th.
Okay, there we go. So October 1st to October 30th. So again, pause this shit right now, go to the Kickstarter, support it, and then come back. Um, so throughout the creative process, kind of talked a little bit about wrestling earlier. Throughout the creative process, um, like I guess what part has or does wrestling play in your creative process? What
Hmm.
like is there any kind of influence, or is that just kind of a separate
Yeah,
hobby that you
no,
have?
there is influence. I'll tell you where. When I was a kid, I used to play with action figures a lot, right? We would buy the WWE action figures. We'd buy Batman and like Spawn and like Gambit, and we'd build stories, right?
Okay.
And I feel like that's where my origin as a storyteller really comes from, is playing with action figures and like building stories with like the Incredible Hulk meets Batman, and or like because I had all these, like, I had a bunch of like Marvel and DC action figures. I had a lot of the WWE action figures, and I would make stories together, and I would even like play with them sometimes, like like the wrestlers, and you got to pin each other, one, two, three.
Yeah.
I remember doing like these like tournaments where it was like Christmas was always the best time because you had the Christmas tree, and you could use
Hmm.
that to play with your toys, and like they're on the Christmas tree. It's like a Money in the Bank type of thing where like they got to
Yeah.
get to the star. So yeah, like especially I would say that's where wrestling kind of uh, influenced my storytelling, because I watch a lot of wrestling, and a lot of times these storylines I was making up were like super wrestling like inspired with like cheating, action figures were cheating on their spouses or whatever,
The
and
heel
like
turn and the
yeah, the heel turns and like the championship belts were always on the line, and like I don't know, like that was definitely a big portion of my storytelling, just like life when I was young.
okay.
I loved playing with action figures. I didn't stop until I was like 13. Like I was getting too old, to play with action figures.
Yeah,
And
I hit that same level too.
yeah. And so it's like, what do I do now? I don't have that creative outlet anymore, right? To tell these stories. And so now it's like, it was after that, it became like, okay, I wanted to do animation for a long time. I wanted to be an
Okay.
animator, or be an animation writer. And then, obviously I was like, also, well, yeah, comic books, obviously, like I love comic books. Let me write those too. And so, yeah, like there's even been times where like I would love to get hired by like WWE or whatever, and like write for them, because I feel like I could totally do it. Especially with the Latino characters, man, they need some Latino writers, man.
Yeah, they're in desperate need of that. They just bunch them all together and either make them friends or make them feud. It's like, man, come
Right.
on.
Yeah.
You can sprinkle them around. We,
Yeah, you can give them better storylines, you can give them
yeah,
unique storylines, and
you can actually give them, their individual personalities instead of
right, right.
it's another
Yeah.
high flyer. Yeah, that's
Right.
that's that's all that's very frustrating. And yeah, me and Oscar talked at length about that stuff, man. It's frustrating to see the like we you get the representation, right? But it's not the fair shake, they're just used as fodder and filler. It's WCW Nitro all over again.
Yeah.
Using the Mexicans and the Japanese guys as just
Cruiserweights.
cruiserweights, and yeah, they're just filler for all the heavyweight guys.
Yeah, I mean, they're
But
the ones putting on the best shows, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the acrobatics that you look at and you're like, man, nobody else can do this stuff. And that kind of frustrates me about the whole talk about like, oh, it's too much flips. It's the flippy stuff, like the Will Ospreay Ricochet match.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's too much flips, and it's like, dude, can you do that? How many people that can do that for 30
Mhm.
minutes?
Right.
So that's, I think, where Oscar talks about, I wish people would watch wrestling the right way. It's like there's an appreciation for this thing. But
Yeah.
what? But speaking of that, what's the aspect of wrestling that you're talking about storytelling and how wrestling's kind of played a part in that? Like, what's the aspect of wrestling that you like the most, or what's like that big hook that gets you about it, or
I
that
think,
may bring you back to it, even though they have runs of like shit storylines sometimes on mainstream TV.
yeah.
But what is it? What's that
It's,
love about?
I think it's definitely a mix of loving the storylines, even the crappy ones, and just kind of like turning off your brain a little bit and just enjoying the show for what it is.
Okay.
And there's also that aspect that of just appreciating the wrestlers and the craft of wrestling. It's You got to have the both. You got to have them both together. And yeah, I mean, like if once you can kind of just like, oh, okay, this is like a play almost, or like a soap opera on a stage, and we're with acrobatics, and you know I love ground and pound, like just wrestling, slam wrestling, like the
Yeah.
power bombs, the tombstone power drivers, the any kind of power driver. I love those. So
If someone gets dumped on their head, brother, I'm happy.
right. And so I could always enjoy a match, just for the match in itself. But there was always, you have your characters that you like, and you watch them as their career goes, and like the Undertaker was one that I gravitated towards, because I love dark gothic
Ah,
type stuff. And so Undertaker was always a big. I always loved the Undertaker. I remember as a kid seeing the Brothers of Destruction just like go destroy someone on like Monday Night Raw or something. They
yeah.
like where they would come back and just kill people every time. And it was just like I remember watching that and being like, "Damn, these guys are badass! Like
Yeah.
no one can take them down."
They're just
Um,
big, they're brawny, and they're just don't take anybody's shit. Yeah.
yeah, and there's also that like you see these macho men, and you're just like, I want to be like them. I want to work out. I want to
Yeah.
learn. I want to get some muscles. I want to learn how to do it. What do you call it? A chokehold or something. Like
Yeah.
yeah, and Yeah,
Dude,
I would.
speaking of that, like, did you ever, you're talking about how you had thought about maybe doing wrestling. Did you ever give much thought to like a gimmick or what your gimmick would be if you were a wrestler?
I never had a gimmick, an idea, like not like a trash can or trash man or anything like that. I always wanted to be like, I always wanted to be like Eddie Guerrero, and just be a wrestler who was a good technical wrestler. And but I guess, kind of like Eddie Guerrero, right? You want to be able to cheat and get away with it and still be loved by the
Yeah,
family. Like you
yeah,
want to be like Ric Flair, you want to be beloved as a heel
yeah.
character. I think everybody kind of wants that, like, because everybody, I think being a heel is probably the funnest, right? I've always gravitated towards the heel characters.
It
Um,
is
they were always my
that.
favorite,
That's
and
how I started whenever me and Oscar first wrestled. I was the heel and I was the rudo and he was the técnico. And
yeah,
it's so much more fun to antagonize the crowd.
right.
Like so much more fun. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much freedom, right? And you can just do what you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. Yeah. No limits. No, yeah. I mean, you have to have kind of a filter, to a certain point, but yeah, just getting people riled up and you're
Mhm.
just like stomping on somebody and just like you like that, that kind of vibe. Like it's cool. It's chicken soup for the asshole soul.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and it is a wonderful sport, man. I remember like kind of being out of wrestling for a little bit because wasn't really into WWE. There was the John Cena like reign of terror, like.
Oh, you said
Like,
you didn't like him. Yeah.
I didn't like John Cena at all. I hated John Cena, and I hated how much he was like shoved down everybody's throats during
Yeah.
that time period. Whenever he beat Rey Mysterio for the WWE champion the day he won it,
Oh, that was heartbreaking.
I hate Vince McMahon. I hate John Cena. They're like literally the worst human beings. Like how are they the good guys? Like how is John Cena a good guy?
Yeah.
Um,
Like, because
poor
we
Ray.
said so.
Yeah, yeah. Like how you gonna challenge a guy who just won the belt? Like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And he's smaller than you and he's like all
Yeah.
beat up.
And so I didn't wasn't a big fan of John Cena, but I kind of stopped watching wrestling for a while because of that. It was also the PG era, and
Oh,
but once NXT came back, that was like it brought me back into wrestling. I started watching like New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'd never watched
yeah.
that before, and that New Japan Pro Wrestling that's even doper than WWE sometimes. Like the match quality at least is on
Yeah.
another level, and you watch those matches like with Stan Hansen and like Vader and like these
That
old
old
classic
school stuff, man. Yeah.
stuff
And
was
that
like.
all Japan and the old
Mhm.
Noah stuff. Oof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that stuff was like another like wow, wrestling is so cool. Like
Yeah.
these guys are actually like hitting each other now. You know what I mean? Like these guys are really tough in Japan. So
Yeah.
I love the hard style. I love the hard hitting style. So
Mm.
yeah.
That was something that WWE, WWF did so well is just insulating the audience from any other type of wrestling. Because during that era that WWE was pretty terrible, which is
Hmm.
like, over a course of roughly 20 years,
Yeah.
um, there was so much good shit out there. Like on the indies, there was Ring of Honor and TNA Wrestling, like their storylines kind of sucked, but their in-ring product was really good.
Yeah.
And New Japan's has always been really amazing. Then you have Lucha Libre and everything, and
CMLL.
yeah, and so I think that NXT did the same thing that it did to you for a lot of other people. It made me go back to that. Oscar used to be what he got me into like forums and stuff like that, wrestling forums, and he would download matches and we'd exchange them like on the hard drive and stuff. Um, and so I'd stopped doing that for a while, and then I was just kind of catching wrestling here and there, mostly WWE and TNA stuff.
Hmm.
But then when NXT came back, like I went back and kind of started watching the stuff that I was missing. And
Yeah.
just like you, it got me back, into searching for more New Japan stuff and everything. Because before we were looking up like stuff from like Ebisan. I don't know if you remember that guy, but he had like this big ass, like big cheek like mask, and he was like a comedy wrestler. I think his move was the Shining Wizard. So I remember the call like on the clips of his matches being the Shining Wizard. Oh, um, but uh, but anyway, we would seek that guy out, right? But now it was different. Now it was just this. it's like the ECW style, but like grown up, like a little more updated, a little safer. And
Yeah.
it's just this crazy badass hybrid now. But that's cool, man. That brought you into the world of New Japan and all that. Have you caught any GCW? Are you into that at all?
Yeah. What's his name? The guy with the pizza cutter. Nick Gage. Nick Cage.
Nick
Hell yeah.
Gage, yeah.
I've watched the. I mean, I got they got on my radar with the Matt Cardona Nick Cage match.
Oh, okay.
Um, and like that, after watching that, that's when I first heard about him. I've only seen a few of their matches, like with John Moxley. I think he did a match
Mm.
with Nick Gage, and but I'm not like up to date on them now, like as much. But yeah, I try to stay somewhat into the indies, and I keep up to date with some of the indie wrestlers, like
Hmm.
Penta and Ray Phoenix. I saw them at a Master Republic show here in Dallas not too long ago. Uh,
Badass, hell yeah.
yeah, and so I try to go to those lucha libre events if whenever they can. GCW, do they have events here in Dallas? I would love to go see that.
In Texas, I think they do actually. Yeah, because I think Alley Catch is pretty big at the Texas events and stuff.
I would love to see a death match. I've never
Pretty sure
seen
they
one
have. What's
live,
that?
but I would love to see a death match live, man. Like I
Oh
was never,
man, it's so cool.
yeah, I was never really into death matches when I was younger, but like as I gotten older, it's like, dude, these are pretty badass. Like these guys are really hurting each other. I love it.
Yeah, you really get an appreciation for the different types of wrestling. I know that there's some folks out there that are like, no, that's just not wrestling. And these are folks that, would, know way better than me.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, no, that's not wrestling. But then you also have the same type of folks that are like, nah, there's all kinds, there's all types.
Yeah.
It's
There's comedy
entertainment, man.
wrestling.
Yeah, there's the basic foundation for what wrestling is, good guy, bad guy, the whole morality play of it all when you're doing storylines and everything. And of course, there's the moves, and the ring itself. But beyond that, there's different stuff, man. There's comedy, there's the death match stuff, there's your mainstream, more WWE, and again, lucha, more acrobatic. Um, but yeah,
You
I
even have the
was,
horror characters. Like even horror is a part of it too.
yeah,
Like the Wyatt
exactly.
Six. They're like horror monsters. Like I love that stuff right now.
Yeah, I keep saying over and over that, wrestling is everything. Everything entertainment is wrestling and wrestling is everything entertainment.
Mhm.
That's just kind of what it's grown into.
As I was saying, I have a big appreciation for horror movies, the filmmaking process, and wrestling and comic books and the comic book creation process, and so I feel like all that stuff kind of blends in and makes the creator I am.
Yeah, me and Oscar talked about that as well recently, and yeah, it's surprising. We've been writing stuff for a while, been working on our projects for a while, and it's just I don't know why it's surprising, but it's just surprising that just how much information it takes. Like a bunch of stuff you got to bring in order to make something, to create something. Um, but I think that's part of I mean, that's part of the fun of making art, of just creating is going through that. That's kind of the research that you're doing. It's like shit, my research is reading comics and watching movies and watching wrestling and stuff like that. Like fuck, I'll take that, and then I'll make something new out of whatever I learned. And in this case, doing all that, but also more about Mesoamerican history and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so blending all that stuff in. Um, but that's really neat, man. It's been really cool because I've been following you for a while now as well, Grimmcore Studios, and then you as well. And also from both of y'all, I see that y'all have supported us as well throughout the last few years and what have you. So it's been really cool to see y'all moving up pretty quick after becoming aware of the stuff y'all were doing, and to see that collaboration, it made sense. So proud of you, man. Super proud of you
Thank you.
for what you're doing. Support that Kickstarter, you all. Pause it again and go support it. But as far as where they can see your work, where else can people check you out?
Yeah, you can check me out at Kamazotz Comics. That's my Instagram, Twitter handle. Um, that's where I keep everybody updated on what I'm doing. I'm planning on doing a bunch of projects in the future, not just with Grimmcore, but with other publishers as well,
Right there.
and just keep advancing as a comic book writer. And I have well, yeah, I'm not gonna reveal what, what I'm planning, but you can check my Instagram page. It'll give you a hint on what I'm
Stay
doing.
tuned, is what he's
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. For now, it's mostly the Return of Camazotz. We're gonna finish with the third issue, probably coming out next year, and then after that, it's we might continue it. So but it's I say for now, once the third issue comes out, that's gonna be the end of this chapter of the story, or
Hmm.
this story. But there's no telling what we can do in the future with that world that we built now, and that groundwork that we've done. So. I think people are going to want more. I just know it, and I feel it already, and
Yeah.
I feel it as a writer too. Like I want to tell more stories with these characters as well. So there's definitely going to be more in the future for Kamazotz and that story. So if people are into it, you continue loving it, continue supporting it, and we'll keep making more stuff. So
And there
yeah.
you go. And I know it's gonna hit, man. I'm excited for you because yeah, it's gonna blow up. I'm sure of it. And we'll have you on a little bit later to see how this campaign went. Um, but man, but thank you so much for being on, being our first guest. This was a great chat, man. But yeah, thank you so much, man, and thank you for supporting everything that we do. So
Mhm.
we're gonna return that favor, man, because you're doing amazing work, y'all. Your team is pretty phenomenal. But
Thank you,
go
man.
support Return of Camazotz. Oh man, thank you. And
One more thing.
folks, oh yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna be at Mex Americon in November. I got the invite, so expect to see me there. If you want to support me, buy the comic and meet me in person. Mex Americon in November in Austin. So check that out.
There you go. So Mex Americon. So stay tuned to them too, and our page as well, because either Oscar or both myself and Oscar will be there too. So hopefully I'll see you there, man.
Yeah.
Um, but again, thank you all for joining us, and this has been the Realist Scraps Wrestling Podcast. For Rafael Flores, I am Rolo. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Peace.